Sit.
Sit, yeah. We'll sit.
Sit.
I can sit
Oh,
down.
yes.
Yep. Oh.
Don't go on for like a minute or so.
So, I guess I missed it. I'm losing.
Welcome back to Bloomington Early Music's 2026 Festival, Early Music in Early America. Tonight's program takes us to French Louisiana through a remarkable devotional manuscript copied in France and later given to the Ursuline convent in New Orleans. This evening's program is led by Philip Spray, founder and artistic director of Alchymy Viols, whose transcriptions bring this extraordinary source into sound. We are joined by an unusually rich company of artists tonight. Sopranos Molly Netter and Nathalie Collard and Sophia Duray. And for our instruments, we welcome Thomas Gerber, Brian Kay, Joanna Blendiff, Ingrid Matthews, and Leanne Dial-Ragusa. Before tonight's concert, we turn first to the manuscript and the world behind it. Our interlocutors are Phil Spray and John Romey, a specialist in early modern French music, politics, religion, and historical performance. And I am very pleased to say a newly appointed member of the musicology faculty at Indiana University.
That's wonderful.
We thank our sponsors, Kathleen Cameron, Jack Dosco, Jean Person, Paul Borg, and the departments of French and Italian at Indiana University. So thank you for being here, and welcome and enjoy Songbook from Across the Sea.
And are those sponsors, I know Paul is right there. Any other sponsors? Please, Paul, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I am so pleased to be here. And how lucky when I was on an interview at IU's musicology department, right after which I had given a talk on this rather under-researched manuscript from New Orleans, the only manuscript of music from the French period of colonial New Orleans to survive. And I received an email saying, could you come and talk about this manuscript that you just gave this academic talk? So I'm very pleased to be here with you tonight. And so I'd like to just get this conversation going by asking Phil exactly how you came across this manuscript and got inspired to use this, which as far as I know has only ever been, any of this music been recorded once.
Inspired is the right word, I think. And I'm a new believer in serendipity. I mean, this is almost unbelievable. So it's Christmas, like a couple days before Christmas. I wish I could take credit for putting this magnificent idea together, making it real, but it's not my idea. And I don't think either of them are here. I got a call from Carol Ann and Suzanne. And Carol Ann said, you know what, I was walking down through the library, and I came across this strange sized book, this very book. She pulled it out. It says French Baroque Music of New Orleans. I said, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Maybe that's something we could use in the festival this year. And then Suzanne says, you know, would you consider putting together a program of music from this book? And it took me about 10 seconds to absolutely, it was a great idea. And then serendipity, who is just upstate, John, who is an expert on this period and this literature, has written papers on this. It is this concert was meant to happen, I think. So John, I mean, this is an esoteric subject. How did you find your way to it?
So I was working on a second book project about the Ursulines and music specifically. And not just the Ursulines, but also the Jesuits. They were both teaching orders.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them were very interested in using music as part of the Counter-Reformation. And so I was really working on a book about France until I too, not the facsimile that was published in France, but I too discovered this manuscript as well as some music from Quebec and realized that what was happening in the late 17th century at Louis XIV's court with his second wife, Madame de Maintenon, was used as part of the Counter-Reformation the concept that I'm interested in is purification and cleansing of opera air. So much of the music you'll hear tonight is actually sacred text rewritten to opera airs from anywhere from 1680s until the 1720s.
So we should clarify, do you know the term contrafacta? I didn't. I do now. It was common, well, starting what, 1600s you said earlier?
Actually, it's been common probably since as long as humans made music, but in France this tradition starts...
And it stopped when there were copyright laws.
Although Weird Al is still making...
Weird Al is
things,
still...
right?
The idea is, if there's a good tune out there, it's too good to waste on one composer. So you take that music and you take out the words and you add other words to it, you add other purposes to it, and that's exactly what they did right here.
And particularly they were concerned with women singing opera airs. The talk I gave for the job interview here was on opera madness in the 1680s, particularly with, there was a lot of misogynistic discourse around women who would go to the opera, would be enchanted, and then would never stop singing. They would only speak in song, like recitative. It was really serious, and they were really upset about it. It's a huge discourse. And so some of the religious reformers, often in a very misogynistic way, would decide, well, you can't sing about Venus, you can sing about Mary, and we'll change as few words as possible because we can't stop the women from singing these things. The noble women were the nuns, and so we can get women to perform in their homes, in the convent, these sacred texts, or instead, you can't sing about carnal love, so instead, you would sing about divine love, and you would change as few words as possible in order to allow them to sing the tunes, but to cleanse them in some way.
Maybe one section they would talk about in praise of Bacchus. It would be really easy. In praise of God. You just change one word right there.
Absolutely. As few words as possible is better.
Because, especially French music, the lay of the land, the lay of the words is everything in French music. The rhythms reflect the language more than any other, I think.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm kind of curious, this music has not been recorded or performed very much. This is a really important manuscript of the only music that survives from colonial New Orleans. But it's really meant for private devotion. It's meant for women to perform in their own homes or in their convent or in a pedagogical setting of the Ursulines teaching music as part of their curriculum from 10 through 16 had tons of music in it, and they taught literacy through music as well. So I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about how you put a program together for an audience who's not in a convent listening to private devotion, who wants to be entertained. How would you plan something like that?
Indeed, that was the challenge. Because, and you're welcome to look at this book later.
It's also available as a facsimile at the Historical Society of New Orleans.
Absolutely gorgeous. This was all hand-copied by CD is all we know?
No, it was donated by CD, I believe. It was copied during Lent, so during a penitential period in Paris. All of these, this manuscript is a copy of a print that was very popular in Paris. So it was a young woman, who would sing these in her home for private devotion, hand-copied them. And then at some point, 20 or so years later, it was donated to the Ursuline Convent in New Orleans. Yeah.
And you should come up later and look at this. 3 different color inks. Black notes, of course, then you have words in red, and then the continual figures underneath are oftentimes in silver. It is absolutely beautiful. And then she added artwork to it also. It is an artwork in its own. And yes, the museum in New Orleans, $110, well worth it. Don't pay more than $110 for it. There are groups out there that want to charge you more for it, but you can get it for $110. Well worth it. Oh, so you were saying, what do you do with this? That's right. These are single pieces. These are meant for a person to play the harpsichord and usually a soprano to sing. Okay, you're going to sit there for an hour. No offense, Shun, but are you going to sit there for an hour and listen to somebody play harpsichord while they're singing sacred music? Well, that's very sweet, but you're expecting something a little bit different than that. Well, so kind of the unvirtuous idea came. Remember, all these are tunes from previous composers. These were hit tunes. So I spent from December probably through March finding the sources of these tunes. There are like 300 in there. And if it was a good tune, where did this come from? this is a Clérembault cantata. Oh, this came from a Lully opera. Searching and searching and searching hours and hours and hours through IMSLP until I found it. Well, almost always the piece had other instruments with it. Maybe two violins, continuo violin and flute, something like that. So what I did is I added sometimes those back into the music for performance for you tonight. So that maybe it's a little more like concert music. What they did in the manuscript, however, they kept those tunes of the instrument, and maybe while the left hand was playing the bass, the right hand would go down an octave and play that little melody in the right hand so that it still appears. But especially in the cantata, I listened for l'amour, how do you pronounce it? L'amour? L'amour, death. This is from the Clérembault cantata of Orpheus. Some of the most profoundly genius music I have ever heard, especially at the end, when Leanne is on the flute, when Ingrid comes in on the violin, out of nowhere, thinking it's just like two planets coming together and meeting. How did he think of this? That had to be back in the music so you could hear it. I'm looking forward to you hearing it tonight. So I did some kind of dirty things, adding other pieces, and then I tried to make sets out of them. You'll find tonight we have an opening cantata of Desmarais. It was the only cantata actually written for this, I think. Then we're going to have a Vice and Virtue set. Then we're going to have a Life is Tough set, where you're going to have these really profound pieces. Then we're going to have Answers to the Hard Life set. And finally, we're going to have the Wisdom set, where we group them together. So we're going to try to segue between certain pieces so that it's not just like a Renaissance dance, 30 seconds and the piece ends.
I think that's probably, they knew these pieces, especially the opera airs, they knew them so well, so even though they performed them in salons and in a variety of contexts, they would have heard these other parts in their head. It's not that because it's not written in this particular publication, they would have no context for that, absolutely.
I'm glad you said that, Mr. Matthews. You know what happened yesterday? At rehearsal, we were playing a piece, Follies of Youth, based on a Couperin tune. And there's no violin part in it, other than just the melody. And suddenly, I hear this viola line going on. And Ingrid kind of, so kindly, as Ingrid always is, she says, I'm just making up a viola line to go with it. Is that okay? I said, that's exactly what the nuns would have done. You had a good violinist. It's house music. You need something, you make it up. Then the singer said, can I add this ornament, or would that be unidiomatic? That's exactly what they would have done. It's house music. You make up your own music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any questions out there? Anything that you would like to ask? No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. You'll probably recognize some of these tunes, I think.
Could I just chime? Oh, sorry, we have a question.
About the context, so this particular convent and maybe who was there and how they got there.
That's exactly what I was going to add, so thank you. Great, I should have shut my mouth for one more second. So what's really interesting, what got me really interested in what I spoke about in the paper that I've written about these nuns, is that they were, the original nuns came in 1727 to New Orleans, shortly after it was founded. And it was kind of a lawless place. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of place. And they were sending all kinds of people from France shortly after as well, who were undesirables, poor people from the streets. The nuns were charged, in France, it was not like the Spanish or the English colonies, in that the Code Noir that was published first in the 1685, but then another one revised for New Orleans, 1727, it mandated that all slaves in France be baptized Catholic, be married Catholic, be given all the sacraments. And so the Ursulines, who were teaching order, actually got to New Orleans. They were nuns in Rouen, so they gave their dowries. They were nobles who gave their dowries to the convent already in Western France. So usually that would support them in the convent for their entire time being a nun. So they came with nothing. And so the crown gifted them slaves. They worked a plantation across the river, as well as we know from Sophie White's work, a scholar at Notre Dame, that we know some of the names and some of their lives through court testimonies of the slaves that Ursulines owned, as well as the children that they owned. Particularly one was murdered by a drunken French soldier, and that led to a bunch of court testimony about her and her husband and her children. And so even though their job in New Orleans was to work at the hospital, to basically nurse the sick, that was not what their order was about. They were a teaching order. So they were very, very eager to not do that as much as possible and to teach as much as possible. And so their goal was to teach women, particularly tenets of the Catholic faith. You could teach the children in the home because that's part of the Counter-Reformation idea. And they very quickly found that they were also adopting orphans. They had a small class of French-born or continental-born French descendants, but they also taught basic catechism to free and enslaved blacks in the colonies, as well as Native Americans. So their classes were very, very, they had separate eating quarters, but the fact that these songs could have been heard by a vast number of different people from different backgrounds at this time was very possible. And actually, I think what makes this really interesting to dive into this manuscript, to think about these songs that were composed in France, the parodies were written and published in France, they were copied by a young woman in France, but then had to take on a completely different context in the convent in New Orleans.
Completely do, right. Suzanne may be aware of something I'd never heard of before. How many of you know about the Casket Girls? Well, I didn't either. How many of you know about the vampire legends of New Orleans? Well, of course, we all know it. We've all heard about it. They're the same thing. So coming from France, on the ship Aurora, was that the name of the ship?
I think so.
Long trip, they're pale. They're going to take all kinds of luggage with them? No, they're going to have one suitcase. They're going to cram everything in one suitcase. They come off the ship. They're carrying these suitcases, and in French, a suitcase that is pronounced...
Now, which word are you using? It's casquette. Okay.
Casquette. It looks like casket. So you hear that word. These girls are carrying their own caskets off the ship. And so it started, there's something wrong with these girls. They're carrying caskets around with them. They're very, they were probably skinny, they were sick, there were no color in their face, and they went to the convent. And then I think there's some pretty bad stories about what happened to the girls in the convent, where because the rumors going around where the nuns ended up locking some of them up in the attic to protect them or something like that. Some pretty horrible stories. But some of these casket girls might have been the ones who heard some of these songs, were taught these songs.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Sir?
I'm sorry, I missed. I was trying to find a parking place.
Oh, yeah, I'm right there with you.
I missed the first 5 minutes, so you may have already said this. When you were talking about these parodies or counterfact, how early did the French start doing that, and how much documentation do we have on it?
So probably since as long as there were people, but the documentation of this context of sacred parodies, I believe, starts in around the 1560s during the wars of religion between Huguenots and Catholics, which is why it takes on important meaning during the Counter-Reformation. There was an important publication called The Antidote, in which the Huguenot metric psalms were rewritten with text about how the Huguenots were terrible and we should kill them. And they sang these against the Huguenots who were singing the psalms back and forth. So there's a long, long tradition of this that really doesn't die out until around this time, actually, around the 1760s, 1770s, you start having hack writers in the Enlightenment write tons of these things and just publishing sometimes the opera composer, the librettists for the opera themselves would write parodies of their own to promote their own opera. So it's a real long tradition.
So how does that relate? Most of these composers also wrote a lot of their own sacred music.
Yes.
So how did that relate to...
Yes, I'm going to guess that a lot of the sacred music that they wrote is going to be based on Scripture, is going to be taken out of Scripture, or perhaps the Mass. These are sacred poems, I would say. I think they know who actually wrote these texts.
Some of them, yeah.
I think on the French published book, it talks about spiritual and moral songs.
It's actually called spiritual poetry.
Yes.
The book itself is not called song, it's called spiritual.
Oh, and that's right. And they had fables at the end originally too.
Yep.
Moral fables, kind of like Aesop's fables, but that did not make it into this edition. That's too bad. But it's things like, vanity is really bad for you. You shouldn't do that. Look at your neighbor next to you, and are you meaning to put yourself higher than them? It's kind of like a little bit of a sermon going on, I think. And it's for home use, I think, rather than big, profound mass.
And I think the main difference is these texts are taking often an opera text. So the opera text is about certain things that happen at the operas. One of the things that happen at the operas, a whole bunch, in a lot of these songs, are sailors go and get on a shipwreck. And so you have to take that text and change as few words as possible to make it about private devotion as opposed to public devotion.
Well, before copyright laws, taking somebody else's music and doing something with it on your own was the thing. We give Handel a really hard time right now about doing that. When he got caught with Kaiser's music, he said, well, this music was too good for Kaiser. So I'm going to do something more with it. And now we think, well, he should go to jail. But you didn't do that back then. That was common. And I don't mean to insult anyone, but it's true. I think Star Spangled Banner is contrafacta. That it was a bar song. And Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the choral part, that's a song from a long time ago. A lot of hymns. I mean, you got a good tune, keep it, just put new words to it. So it was a very common practice.
I think this is even more pointed, though, because they were very concerned with the themes of love that was happening at the opera. So the love and the divine love gets replaced by carnal love quite frequently. So it's very much trying to cleanse them, as opposed to just writing a sacred text for some event, for a saint or whatever,
and so,
or the king.
So fascinating what you said to me tonight, and this was aimed at the women.
Absolutely, it's
and
100% for women. They're often written by men, but they're written
yes.
by men for women, right? To say, yes, you women are susceptible to opera madness, so if we cleanse them, we can, and then, of course, some of the men also say, we know this is not a good strategy because we know they're singing the sacred text, and then they're singing the original text right after it in the convent, so it's a problem for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Any other questions? Yeah, Paul.
You mentioned earlier that Ingrid had improvised.
Yes.
Viola line that she didn't know about. Are we going to hear any improvisation tonight?
Well, Ingrid, every rehearsal, I hear more than Ingrid is doing. Part of the genius of Ingrid Matthews is that it's all there, and you just let her go, and oh my gosh, what you're going to hear. Yes. And listen for this there are repeats in a lot of this music.
Yes.
A1, now repeat it. The whole idea of doing the repeat is so that players will do something more, and they'll start ornamenting. Ingrid is doing that. Molly, listen to her on that too. On singing, she will do that. On some of the most glorious arias she's going to do some pretty wild ornamenting on her own. Yes?
I think we're being cut off.
Oh, we're being cut off. We want to thank you all for coming out on this gorgeous, gorgeous night tonight to hear this music. But I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. Thank you for coming. John, thank you, and welcome to Bloomington.